the whole world of people are like, I want to get healthy, I want to lose weight, I want to grow muscles, I want my skincare to go good. And peptides are most likely the way that we're going to get there on top of stem cells.
Peptides are absolutely incredible molecules because they're a little bit larger and they're highly specific as well. So they have a lot more limited off-target side effects when they regulate all these pathways that naturally exist in our body.
So we're talking about this land of gray. These things are not necessarily FDA approved, right?
They're not FDA regulated. It's an extreme gray market. You don't know where to get them from. You go through all these wonky doctors and wonky websites. It is not the same batch. It is not even the same supplier.
We want to be the people that get this drug FDA approved because no one else will, because it can't be patented.
I think one of the biggest criticisms of DeSci, but also of many types of science, is, oh, this is a scam.
The biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies are incentivized financially, right? It's economic incentives that drive or dictate which drugs get approved and which don't. But in this case, it's the community that dictates which drugs are going to be researched or not. These biohackers, they're some of the most passionate and fanatical adopters we've ever seen. To be able to provide them with an opportunity to dictate where the research goes and have a say in their own health is a whole different ballgame. And that's what we create with PeptideDAO.
There's so much business in peptides. There's a supplement business, there's a cosmetics business, there's a drugstore business, there's $1 billion peptide business if you want to sell actual peptides that have its own thing. There's so many different versions of this stuff. If you don't know anything about peptides, this is the DeSci Pilled episode for you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to DeSci Pilled. I am your host, Ryan Bethencourt. Today, we're going to be talking with the founders of PeptideDAO. As a quick reminder, nothing we say is either medical or financial advice, even though it's really cool. I like to experiment. You can do what you want, but it's never advice. It's just edutainment. All right. So we have Hannah and we have Greg. Hannah, actually, let's go. Greg, do you want to introduce yourself? Give a little background on yourself?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Greg Gopman. I'm new to DeSci. I've been in startups for 20 years. I've been in crypto for the last 8 years. I kind of had a Web 2 journey that started in Silicon Valley, doing events and doing building developer ecosystems and throwing a lot of hackathons and doing developer marketing. Moved into dev infrastructure, which got me into crypto around 8 years ago. Started building a decentralized compute blockchain. Started off as Photon. Now it's called Akash. Did that for a couple of years, worked around the industry, worked at different layer ones and infrastructure companies. 2022 came around, I kind of exited, thought I was I didn't know what I want to do in my life, but I was like, I'm going to do something not in crypto. And I got really into health, I got really into longevity, kind of took this journey into stem cells and exosomes, looking at things I can get for my parents, things I can do for myself, try to live longer, live better, stumbled upon peptides and had a journey over the last years of having my mind kind of blown away by what's happening in the peptide industry right now, what's happening in peptide sciences, kind of got me on this journey into PeptideDAO, which we'll be telling you about today, which is really exciting. If you don't know anything about peptides, this is the DeSci Pilled episode for you.
Awesome. And you met Hannah, right? So Hannah, you want to kind of share the story of how the two of you met?
Yeah, so maybe I can touch on my background a little bit.
Yeah,
for
that'd
sure.
be great. Thank you.
So I'm a formally trained scientist, specifically biomedical science. And I graduated from King's College London. That's where I was studying. And during that time and shortly after, I've worked in various healthcare institutions. I worked at the NHS. I also worked in a lab in the field of immunology specifically. And I've always wanted to make an impact in science. I just didn't know that it would end up as PeptideDAO. But initially, when I was a kid and always curious about nature and curious about life, just playing in the garden, I said to my mum, I was like, I want to be a bug doctor. Why are there no doctors for bugs? There's doctors for people. There's doctors for animals as well. And so I was always just curious about nature and I wanted to help people make a difference in science. And after I graduated, I considered a PhD for quite a while. I was constantly going back and forth. But I kind of saw some of the early warning signs in traditional academia in terms of, researchers spending most of their time looking at grants instead of actually doing research. And I was trying to find a way where I can make a difference in science. But at the same time, randomly, I also studied entrepreneurship back at university. I knew that I always wanted to innovate. I'm also like a massive fan of like sci-fi. I really think that, the future is where we should be innovating. So at the end of last year, I went to all these conferences in Southeast Asia and just like showed up to all the DeSci events and just put myself out there, met all the founders, met people working in the industry and tried to understand what's actually going on. What is this space? And once I was so embraced by this community and I kind of found out the problems that DeSci solves, for me, there was like, there's no way I'm going back to academia. So I was so motivated to get involved in some kind of way. And I joined some working groups. I got involved in DeSci, but I wanted to build. And it was at that point where I met Greg. And he presented this opportunity of, hey, I've come up with this idea of PeptideDAO, and I'd had some experience in DeSci and coming from a scientific background. Greg also being a biohacker and having this experience in crypto, we were like, let's merge the worlds and come together. But maybe Greg can go into the story of kind of how we met.
Yeah, and maybe just to add, I think everyone's going to have questions around peptides, right? Many people, first time they may have heard of peptides is maybe like RFK Jr., how's a 70-year-old man in such great shape? And someone said peptides, and they're like, what is is that steroids? Is that so? I think there's going to be this kind of deep dive that we're going to go into. I thought I'd just ask you one quick question, Hannah. So many of us are fans of science fiction, right? What's your favorite science fiction?
Oof. I love Asimov's short stories. I think they're great. That's just like a personal interest to me.
Like iRobot. A lot of people don't realize those are short stories. This is really interesting.
Wow.
The iRobot.
I have read so much sci-fi and I do not know these short stories. This is really exciting for me.
I highly recommend it, Greg. I mean, the iRobot short stories by Asimov. Hannah, have you read them? Have you read these? Like, there's a series of short stories. They talk about the evolution of sentient AIs.
Yeah.
And it's through small short stories of like, oh, a robot did this and a robot, and all of them are like slightly unexpected things that happen that lead to these
relevant
machines.
Yeah,
very relevant to our era.
If you guys haven't read, I think it's The Last Question. It's amazing. It's really captivating.
I have not read The Last Question. I need to. I've heard it's a really interesting one too.
Yeah, it's like a 30-minute read.
I love Asimov. I was obsessed with the Foundation series. So that was a huge obsession. And the latest show of Foundation series is awesome. It's really good.
I always think that's like very similar to the Bitcoin story. It's like a psychohistorian with Satoshi, like all roads lead to Bitcoin. There's no stopping it.
Yeah. All roads lead to everything, right? Pure accelerationism everywhere, right? Biology, AI, crypto. And I think that kind of leads us to a really interesting spot. So PeptideDAO, right? So now most people are like, what is a peptide, right? Most people are going to be like, especially some of the crypto people, although there are some crypto people that already take peptides, especially those that are part of like the Don't Die movement or work out or something like that.
It's like a very good Venn diagram between crypto people and peptide people, because they're people on the willing to work in like gray markets, looking for the best of something, willing to go outside of the system. That's where peptides kind of lie right now. And so peptides are super interesting. If you don't know what peptides are, you probably think of them as like, maybe you've seen them as collagen peptides and you're like, oh, okay, that's like something I get with my smoothie. Or maybe you've seen them in the CVS or something like that, in the skincare aisle, and you're like, oh, those are things that I put on my face, like copper peptides that go on my face. And the reality is peptides are these signaling molecules in our body that tell every organ in our body what to do. We just don't know all the peptides and what they do for all the different organs yet, but we're starting to figure it out. So it's this Cambrian explosion in healthcare right now over all the different ways we can make our body do the things we want through peptides. And they're really, really cool. They've been extreme safe profile as far as like things that we're putting into our bodies go. So a very low risk profile because they're naturally occurring things in our body. They're androgynous. And when you put more peptides in your body, you're not like, your body takes them on really well. And they tell your body to do these natural things. So insulin is a peptide, right? Probably a most commonly used peptide that people know about. That's how people don't die from diabetes. It's an insulin peptide. Right now, these GLP-1s and GLP-2s and GLP-3s, these are all peptides that people are taking for if they have diabetes. These are metabolic peptides to help out with their metabolic functions. And so there's peptides to help out with erectile dysfunction. There's peptides to help out with growth and like growing muscles. And so like you'll see Kennedy, like Bobby Kennedy, and you'll look at him, you'll be like, is that dude on steroids? What's going on with that? No, he's taking growth hormones. Like that's, oh, by the way, anytime you see a massive ripped up dude, you know, he's either on steroids if he's really big, or if he's like just really, really good looking and looks probably natural, it's probably growth hormones. Like some people can get it naturally, but like most people are getting there through like tesamorelin or a normal growth hormone. And that's just kind of like what it takes. And so peptides are these things that take your body and say, lose weight, grow bigger, like heal faster, look younger. Longevity, the key to longevity is likely a peptide also, like things that increase and decrease your telomere lengths. And so we're just starting to understand all this stuff. I came into it much like anyone who's probably watching this, like what the hell are these things and how they, and then the deeper you go in the industry, the deeper you go down a rabbit hole, they're not FDA regulated. It's extreme gray market. You don't know where to get them from. You go through all these wonky doctors and wonky websites. I have my own peptide journey that I've gone through, which has not been excellent. You think someone starting this company like knows all the best of the best places to get it. You don't start off knowing what's right and wrong. You go through a journey of like taking all these experimental things, injecting them in your body. You can take them as supplements, you can take them as topicals, you can take them as injections. It's pretty crazy. And like along this way, as I was like getting like DeSci Pilled, or like I got Peptide Pilled, and then I got DeSci Pilled, and then thank God I met Hannah, who like was like my DeSci co-part, because I knew nothing of DeSci. I have a lot of knowledge in Web3. I have a lot of knowledge on like how to build businesses and make token businesses and build companies and work with a lot of people and have partnerships and raise funds. Zero information on science or DeSci. And so I was feeling really incomplete. Luckily, one of my best friends was really close with Hannah, and she was doing her DeSci journey. And so she kind of completed the PeptideDAO story for us. I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of kind of like what got us into this.
It does. And like, I think many people are going to be really interested in your peptide story, right? It's like, you're like, hey, I want something, right? What was that thing? Was it like BPC-157? What was it? What was the...
For me, it was Tesamorelin. So I saw a friend, and he was like, always a friend who worked out all the time.
And tell us what that is. Tell us what Tesamorelin is.
So my buddy, Tesamorelin is one of the few, it's a growth hormone peptide, but it also helps you to lose visceral fat. So not only do you grow muscle and look like those, like if you put your picture in AI, I always say, if you're like, hey, let me put my pictures in AI, it sends you back your normal self with pecs, like with bigger muscles and a smaller waist, right? That's what Tesamorelin is. Tesamorelin is like the AI peptide, okay? And so you'll lose this visceral fat in your stomach, the hardest fat to lose in your body. It's not just normal fat, it's like organ visceral fat. And so it decreases.
So many of us have struggled with that. Like as you get older, you get it. Like it's
I'm
hard.
not doing an hour of abs a day. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? I want the six pack, but I'm not doing that one. And so I saw my buddy, and he had it. He had the six pack, and we're like 40, like, dude, what do you take? What is this? He's like, Tesamorelin. You got to, you don't know. I was like, no, I don't know Tesamorelin. What is this nonsense? And originally a lot of people who had AIDS used to take it because their muscle mass would completely decrease.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's what got it famous. That's what they used to recommend to people who were on AIDS in like, the last like 20 years to help them like, not look
and with AIDS they wasted. So what happened is their muscles unfortunately would waste. This would be before we had a lot of the great HIV meds, the antivirals we have today. It was a really devastating disease.
Yep. And like, the gay community, they're like, yo, I look great on these things. So they were like very early biohackers in the peptide movement. They're like, yo, I don't have to have AIDS. I can just take this thing
and look great, right?
Yeah. So a lot of the gays are on peptide. They love peptide.
Right. I'm learning a lot here, right?
They're always first. They're always our first to the cool stuff.
Yeah. So that was kind of the beginning of your journey, and I'm sure you were probably like, okay, well, how do I get this stuff, right? Like, I've gone through similar journeys with things like metformin or rapamycin for longevity,
right?
And these are small molecules. And peptides, I mean, I think most of us, by the way, including me, I'd struggle to know where to start. I mean, I'd probably just do a Google search or something, right? And so yeah.
Well, so what happens is like you have a friend, your friend takes peptides. You say, where do you get your peptides? And he introduces you to his like wonky doctor that's like barely, you know, they're like licensed, but they barely have a website. They have a little like hole in the wall like office. They start like constituting things for you that it's illegal. They're not even allowed to do. And they're like, yo, let me give you this thing. Let me give you that thing. You're like, how many milliliters? There's like not directions. It's not like coming from Pfizer. You don't even know where the hell they got it from. And they send you home with a box full of needles. They send you home with like you pay extra to have the syringes filled up. You literally have no idea. You're like, okay, I think I inject this in my arm, and then you have to go through. You're like, am I a heroin addict now? I got needles in my place. I'm like, am I a steroid user?
Peptides.
You see people's fridges that are like full of needles and peptides. It's crazy.
Wow.
So
Take
far
this very
from the traditional medical experience you have, or the supplement experience, which is just pills. And you're like, all right, maybe the pills do nothing. You know, it's like they're so rare. You have to get like really high quality pills.
Yeah.
So these peptides, though, you're and then you're sticking yourself like, you're sticking yourself in the belly, doing sub-Q. You're like, you know, you have to
and by the way,
spot that doesn't.
sticking people's wild. Like I have, you know, my mother takes Ozempic, and like I've helped her with her Ozempic. It's like, it feels like a medical procedure. You're like, okay, let me get, you know, we'll get the, you know, get the stomach, put it, and it's like, it's no joke. Like a lot of people are like, I think a lot of people think Ozempic should just take a pill. It's like, no, actually you stick it in your belly and you inject it, and it's like a special delivery of like a very measured dose of the peptide, right?
Well, that's what also creates a great opportunity in peptides, is to kind of explore what are better methods that we can use for people to improve patient compliance, essentially, because a lot of people don't want to inject themselves with needles. A lot of people do because they care that much about their health. But if we can look into other formulations where you can have like an oral peptide that has a much better bioavailability than what currently exists in the supplement realm, then that would completely change the landscape, and more people would be taking peptides, in my opinion.
I was the kid when I was younger, when we had to do blood tests. They would come out, they'd have to have like 3 orderlies hold me down. I would be like kicking and screaming.
Wow.
I'd like knock them in the face. I'd run out, run under the cars, hide under the cars, take them hours to find me. I was that scared of needles. And so for me doing these peptides, I was like, okay, let me try the BPC-157. I got the shoulder problem. I want to do the Tesamorelin and then like increase my stuff. My skincare, I want to do DHKCU and do copper peptides. And it was different needles for all these things and different size needles. And you put them in different places. And I was like, we can't just like, can we just simplify this whole thing? And then I went through this period of like going on Amazon and finding all these things that you get for insulin kits. Like there's all these like little things to try to make the needles not hurt. Eventually you just like, fuck, I'm just gonna have to deal with this whole needle thing, you know? And how do I get all the peptides into the same needle if I'm lucky?
I mean, that's wild, right? Like a literally like, I don't know, a super injection. You just literally do it. You look around a couple of weeks later and your body's entirely transformed. That's pretty crazy.
Peptides are absolutely incredible molecules. I mean, I think the benefit over them in comparison to, for example, small molecule drugs that you mentioned, Ryan, is that these small molecule drugs have a lot of off-target side effects because they enter almost every single organ system. But with peptides, because they're a little bit larger and they're highly specific as well, they only function by binding to their respective receptor on a cell. So they have a lot more limited like off-target side effects, which makes them highly specific and favorable over other small molecule drugs. So they're just absolutely incredible, and they regulate all these pathways that naturally exist in our body. So that's why I love peptides.
I mean, and Hannah, there are dozens and dozens of peptides we know of, right? Like,
even more than dozens. There are even like 300,000 peptides that exist.
I stand corrected. 300,000 that exist
in the human body. Exist in the human body. And then every living organism has peptides. So plants all have peptides. Animals all have peptides. There's more. We'll be doing peptide research for the next 1,000 years. You know, like until the AI is figured out.
The one thing that blew my mind, I still remember this, is like when I got into looking into Ozempic, I was like, oh, that's, how did we find the GLP-1 inhibitors? And it turns out it was from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, from Gila monsters, like their saliva, right?
Oh,
familiar with this? It's from their saliva. It's from their saliva, and like we got the peptide out of their saliva. And I don't quite know how that linked between that and weight loss happened, but it did.
Diabetes came in the middle.
It was diabetes. That was it. Was it. It was diabetes that came in the middle. And so it just blew my mind. I was just like, one, how you would make that connection, I'm not sure, but some very smart researcher did, and then tried it. And so, and that's an FDA approved product, right? So that's an FDA approved product. Now we're talking about the gray area, right? So we're talking about this land of gray where this is not like, these things are not necessarily FDA approved, right? Like these are gray markets, gray areas. And so, Greg, how do you think about these things? Like, we're like this gray area that we're in. And by the way, I think that just as a side note, I think that the FDA has really been destructive to the biotech industry. When I first started, it was under $1 billion and 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry to get a new drug approved. Today, it can be 15 years and over $2 billion to get a new drug approved, right? Like, and that just keeps going up and up and up. And a lot of people don't know that there's some divisions in the FDA that don't even approve one new drug per year.
Wow.
Right. And
Brutal.
it's just, it's kind of, we have these perverse incentives for those that kind of are interested in this topic. Balaji talks about this a lot, how he would basically dismantle the FDA. It is a net negative for the most part. It has some safety features, but sometimes we have to take risks. And if we don't take risks, we discount the lives that could have been saved, the millions of lives that could have been saved, versus the ones that are saved because a new drug is not allowed onto the market because there's some risks to the drug that we identify. And it's just been a huge roadblock. And so when we first started talking about peptides, it blew my mind, this gray area, and honestly, the promise and the potential of it. So Greg, how are you thinking about this? Like the peptide world?
If someone doesn't understand DeSci or like why DeSci, I think peptides are the best reason for DeSci. They got to be at least in the top 3 if they're not the top 1, because peptides are blockbuster drugs that millions of people around the world are taking because they do things that help you in ways nothing else out there currently does. And they're not FDA regulated currently because there's not enough research on them. And there's no one willing to do the research on them because you cannot get a patent for most of these peptides because they're naturally occurring in the human body and they've been around for a long time and everyone's already selling them. And so, the $5 to $10 million or 5 years that it's going to take to get these things through all the FDA studies, there's no drug companies want nothing to do with peptides. They don't want to see any of these things be FDA approved unless they can own it and make $1 billion off it.
Yeah.
And then you have like the whole world of people are like, I want to get healthy. I want to look good. I want to lose weight. I want to grow muscles. I want my skincare to go good. I want to like increase my age by 20 years. And peptides are most likely the way that we're going to get there on top of stem cells. Those are probably like the 2 most groundbreaking, or maybe exosomes too, And so why DeSci? We're in this really unique sphere where like PeptideDAO can be the company that does all or starts the FDA studies to start to put forth the safety and efficacy studies to get the first phase and second phase approvals for blockbuster peptides. We're starting with BPC-157. That's the first peptide we want to work with. And then the goal is that we have enough traction and make enough noise and people see enough stuff that we're doing that they want to support us and help us fundraise through the next like phase 3 and phase 4 part. And that's just one peptide, right? There's dozens of peptides that need us to like take, kind of take the torch and push them through the regulatory body. And it's like, it's an amazing DeSci use case for this stuff.
And as Hannah was saying, dozens that have been approved that we are aware of, there's 300,000 just within ourselves. And then who knows how many other 100,000 that are out there, like this Gila monster thing, and that will have uses. The idea of being able to being able to order peptides from a legitimate source. I think one of the challenges for a lot of people that's limiting the use of peptides is what's the legitimate source? I can hear it from a buddy, and I've done that buddy thing where it's like, hey, how do I get hold of metformin? Talk to this buddy. And you have this doctor, it's a legit doctor who will do like off-label prescriptions and things. But it doesn't feel like a really nice, clean way of getting products that we use and making sure. So the vision for PeptideDAO is really providing a place, not just for the research and the data, right? But also the commercial interface, right? Like being able to safely buy some of these products. Is that kind of the vision?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, we see ourselves as like the most trusted name in peptides, not just from a brand perspective, but also in terms of accelerating and revolutionizing peptide research and development as well. And we think this kind of lies in a few main areas. I mean, having scientific rigor is so important, first and foremost, but also having transparency. And this is where the community comes into play, because, a lot of these biotechs and pharma companies work in silos. And so no one is really exactly sure what is going on with the data. And it also hinders progress because everyone's competing to get to the drug instead of working together. So having transparency to our community, telling them what we're doing each step of the way, helps build trust as well in an industry that desperately needs trust as well. And I'd say also our platform is built by the community for the community. So they are also our customers. And I think that's also a really important aspect, because if it's driven by the community, then you are going to see outcomes that satisfy the community. So that's kind of the main pillars and how we envision PeptideDAO essentially in the future.
And Hannah, I think, a lot of criticism probably to the peptide movement. And I think that it's only kind of emerging into like, I guess, the X consciousness, on X.com recently. But it's existed for a long time. And I think one of the biggest criticisms of DeSci, but also of many types of science, is, this is a scam, right? And from the data that I've seen, and most of it's preclinical, but I know that there are a lot of people that are doing self-testing. There's some very legitimate uses and legitimate data around these peptides, right?
Oh, definitely. There's so much strong data and literature on peptides that we could spend many, many hours going through. So I don't think the question is whether or not peptides are legitimate. We understand the science for the most part. We understand how there's such a vast application of peptides. I think it's more so being in the industry of DeSci is what is might be viewed as a problem. I mean, starting off in traditional science, I found solutions to problems by entering DeSci with the traditional science problems such as grants and lack of funding and kind of stifling innovation and being stuck in an industry where there is no room to come up with new ideas and innovate, especially like in the context of a PhD. But so I kind of went to DeSci to see if I could fix some of those problems. And DeSci provides so many incredible opportunities, but to be totally candid, DeSci isn't 100% there either. There are, it's very nascent. It's only been around for a few years. And I think there's going to be constant iterations until DeSci really is strong in all of its facets. Yeah. So I think some people might say, oh, well, DeSci is a scam. And there's always going to be good projects and bad projects. We just have to stand out as being one of those good or great projects even.
And one thing that we did an episode with Adam Draper, it's going to be great. It's short academia, long DeSci. So, and he talked about, he talked about, it's going to be really interesting. And he talked about the early days when he backed Coinbase. And, he says he was the first investor. Apparently there's a little bit of but apparently he was the first investor into Coinbase. And he remembers when Bitcoin went from $30 and crashed down to $3. And I asked him, I was like, in that moment, when you're like literally making a check, an angel check to, this crazy guy who wants to create, an exchange for Bitcoin, right? Which has just crashed. It's going to oblivion, right? It went from $30 to $3, down 90% plus. Why did you do that? Like, why would you back them? Why would you stay in this industry when you're like, it's going to zero? We're in that moment in DeSci right now where there was, we had a lot of excitement, really ran up, and then we've crashed. And he was like, look, be around people that are building great things, that are on a mission to build great things. That's why I did it. It wasn't that I thought, wow, this number is going to go up dramatically. He said, just build great things, create value, people that are on a mission. That are on quests. He uses a very specific word. They're on a quest, right? They're on a quest. And so, I guess to like bridge that over to you, Greg, like you've been in Web 2, you've been in Web 3 in crypto as well. What are your thoughts on like bridging these worlds, right? We've got science that's bridging over, real science, now it's weird. It's DeSci, so it's got like tokenomics and all the things. What's your vision for Peptide DAO? How does it create value for the people that are going to be part of the DAO, that are going to be buying the tokens, all of that sort of stuff? I know you've thought a lot about this.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, it's a very big question with a couple of different answers. I'm going to try to mix into all one and make it sound really cool for you.
Yeah.
So, oddly enough, so I've been in crypto a long time. I've invested in all kinds of things in the space. And you always hear people talking about how we're going to bring crypto to the masses and how crypto is going to impact the world and all this stuff. And like, I honestly think PeptideDAO and the research we do and the things that we're able to like showcase and the studies we're able to do can have more of an impact on the world for most people, for the layman, as far as how we're going to impact the future of healthcare and wellness for like a lot of people out there, than most projects that I've been a part of or seen. Most crypto things are just like DeFi at the end of the day. They're the things that impact the financial system. And a lot of DeSci projects, like, in the realm of DeSci, are doing very far out experimental science and trying to get people to be on board to go with them for this super long ride. And I think a lot of times when people call it a scam, it's either because it's like a meme coin version of DeSci, or it's so far out that it's not tangible right now. And we're doing something that's going to like touch like people's lives and wellness for the next like 5-10 years dramatically once this stuff starts to get approved. And so that's one way where I think it's bridging the gap and going well beyond the traditional things of Web3. The second thing we really like, this company HairDAO in the DeSci space. We think HairDAO is the best DeSci project out there, just because of like how they run their model, how they run their token model. Basically, they have a token, they have all this different research that gets done, and all the profits and all the things that they're doing go back into the token. So they have the research they're doing, but then they have the businesses that they're doing too. And so there's so much business in peptides. There's a supplement business, there's a cosmetics business, there's $1 billion like peptide business if you want to sell actual peptides that have its own thing. There's a drugstore business of peptides. There's so many different versions of this stuff. We're not exactly sure which one we're going to go after. The lowest hanging fruit, we have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be, and like the thing that's going to give us the least regulatory problems. But there's so many different ways to make money in this business. And for us, it's like, we're going to do great research. We're going to build a great community. We're going to have some top tier products that are going to be best of brand and best quality in the entire industry. And we hope people will support what we're doing in our research by buying those products. And then we can take the profits from that, do more research, buy up our token, keep on putting more money into the token model. So the token's seeing a good increase and people are feeling part of this journey with us. That's kind of like what HairDAO is doing. That's why I say that they're the ones that they're like the North Star in the DeSci space that I'd say we look up to for doing this stuff. That's kind of how we see it kind of brings it all together, I would say.
I would agree with you, Greg. Like we're going to have another product podcast that the Andrew from HairDAO is going to be in. And so One of the things that's incredible is just how obsessed the community is about HairDAO's mission and how many interesting directions the community takes the science, right? So really, like for a lot of us, as we're trying to understand DeSci, like what is this? It's like people are incentivized to buy tokens to support the community, to do research they're super passionate about, right? And so many of them are, these are not necessarily laymen and women. These are people who might be doctors themselves. These are people, with HairDAO that are like scientists, researchers. For HairDAO, it's people that are obsessed with male pattern hair loss, and they're taking it, I think he was talking about, and I think this is public, using silencing RNA, right? To like help regrow hair, like really wild ideas in science that really haven't been well explored. And so the idea of PeptideDAO and unleashing the community, because I've just, the last couple of weeks seeing people talk about peptides on X, I'm like, this is so deep, so vast. I mean, an army of thousands of people is needed and can be built using DeSci to explore all the permutations of this, like what dosage, which molecules, do you need to change the molecules to be more stable in the body, right? Like longer lasting, it's just, and that's just one peptide. And then it explodes when you're, Hannah, 300,000 human peptides. There's no possible way one company or one group can explore every permutation, but a community can, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies are incentivized financially, right? It's economic incentives that drive which or dictate which drugs get approved and which don't. And that's why there's such a massive focus on like Ozempic and GLP-1 agonists. But in this case, it's the community that dictates which drugs are going to be researched or not. And the community cares about their own health. I mean, these biohackers that we've seen in like various communities and groups, they're like some of the most passionate and fanatical adopters we've ever seen. So I think it's really important that these communities do already exist in biohacking and peptides, but to be able to provide them with an opportunity to dictate where the research goes and have a say in their own health is a whole different ballgame. And that's what we create with PeptideDAO. So, yeah.
The other really cool thing that kind of feeds into this too is that like all of the other DeSci DAOs have versions of what they want to work on that involve peptides. And so we get reached out to every couple weeks by like another DAO that's like, we're trying to solve this problem. I'll give you an example. Erectus DAO, right? It's a DAO trying to solve ED, erectile dysfunction. And they're like, we really think that like there's a peptide that can help us out with this. And we went up through this discovery process, like what would be the best peptide. And there's a couple of peptides that people take for ED. The best one probably being PT141. And so it creates this opportunity where we can work with other DeSci projects in collaboration, where we co-fund, the research and co-fund the projects, some figuring out to do of like, who's going to be the lead, which research organization we're going to use, like some things like that. But it's like really fun. It allows us as PeptideDAO to not just like be only with our own community, but we can work with a lot of other communities in DeSci. So we're like, it's really interesting for us. Like, we're pretty small. We're pretty new in the DeSci game. We're a 2025 DeSci project where all these other guys have been around, for some of them for like 3-4 years now. But we definitely like have this weird thing where we integrate with a lot of the other DeSci DAOs.
Yeah. And by the way, the amount of time DeSci's really existed is really short. Like most have existed in the last year, right? Like DeSci was kind of born within Ethereum. I think Vitalik was one of the early backers of like VitaDAO, Molecule DAO, BioDAO, and then there was the growth of the movement. But I would say most are about a year old. So yeah, we're so early. We kind of have this little bear market at the moment, right? But it's like it leads back to that whole quest thing where it's like, what happens when you have these incentivized communities that are fanatical? Hannah used exactly the right word. People who are into peptides are fanatical about peptides. If you haven't seen it, just search for any peptide on X and you'll see how or Reddit, and you'll see how fanatical people actually are about the peptides they use and where they get it and how they, purity and all this sort of stuff. And so it's biotech. For the people that are listening, it's real biotech. And yeah, right? Go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
The craziest thing is most of the peptides people are getting right now, they're getting from China. And it's not just that like China is bad, but like the inconsistency between the batches. People have no idea what they're really getting. They just, assume maybe there's been like one COA done like a year ago. It is not the same batch. It is not even the same supplier that this like janky gray area website they're getting their peptides from is like getting stuff from. So the whole industry is in such a nascent early stage right now, but people really want the best quality. They're constantly trying to figure out like what this looks like and what's happening.
I'm so excited. So I'm a geneticist. And so my background is, I was excited by the first peptide. I actually have the cover of the first recombinant protein. It was the Time magazine cover. It was in 1979. Genentech came out with, insulin, right? Like that was literally the transformational. So before recombinant insulin, which is a peptide, was made, we would go to slaughterhouses to basically get pig pancreases, grind them down, and take the peptides out.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was, and I'm sure you know this story, Hannah, like people would inject pig insulin into themselves. And it was a huge problem because being a diabetic, primarily type 1, but also type 2, was kind of a slow death sentence. You would get massive rashes and your body would react against the pig insulin because it wasn't human insulin. So it was transformational. And yet, fast forward to today, many decades later, why aren't peptides used everywhere, right? And it's the FDA. The FDA has slowed progress, right? And so this is potentially a golden dawn for transformative medicine. I call it medicine. I know it's, but it truly is medicine, right? And go ahead, Hannah.
It's not just also kind of the peptides that already exist. Like we mentioned BPC-157. We want to be the people that FDA approve. Get this drug FDA approved, because no one else will, because it can't be patented. But at the same time, like we said, that there are 300,000 peptides in the body. There's so many opportunities to develop very strong IP for novel peptides as well. So there's this one aspect of it, which is bring these peptides to the community that need to be approved so people feel safe and comfortable taking them, like BPC-157. But also there's a lot of opportunity in this novel drug discovery and IP development kind of field, whether that's also in the realm of kind of slightly modifying these peptides chemically to increase their stability, or other aspects of their chemistry, and developing other formulations as well.
Mm-hmm. By the way, there's fascinating science in that space. So the mushrooms are particularly good at that. Mushrooms are really good at stabilizing proteins. Like some of the poisonous mushrooms, they have really, I don't know if you knew this, Greg, this was, so I backed a company called Synthex. I invested in this company called Synthex at IndieBio, and they use that insight to stabilize different proteins, different peptides for therapeutic uses.
Interesting.
And so this is probably, in PeptideDAO, there's probably going to be a whole division of fanatical people that are going to be looking at developing patentable peptides, because you change the structure slightly and you can patent it, right? So that'll open up a whole new area. Yes, big pharma likes patents. Sometimes you need them, right? For those that don't have them, for the naturally occurring stuff, thank goodness PeptideDAO exists, because otherwise no one else would fund these types of projects, right?
And DeSci solves that.
DeSci does solve that. DeSci solves that. Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining dozens of peptides per DAO, right? So, PeptideDAO working with all the other DAOs, I think the mission is for bioprotocol. I think Paul told me, he wants to see 1,000 DAOs bloom, right? Like, that would be incredible.
That's what CZ said, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, maybe it was CZ. Yeah. Paul, CZ, they're all innovating.
Same.
Yeah, same, right? So, but yeah, I mean, like, wow, what an incredible landscape. And so when you all see the future, and we're going to kind of pull it all together, where do you see PeptideDAO going, right? Because today, how can people get involved? Like, if they wanted to get involved, where do they follow you? How do you have a Discord? Like, how do they connect with you?
So we have Twitter. It's live and open. It's at PeptideDAO. There's also a link tree on our Twitter that will take you to our website, which is www.peptide.xyz. There's also our Discord, which is linked on our Twitter as well.
Awesome.
And that's how you can kind of join the community, get involved, learn about the science as well, and contribute.
Yeah, we're also going to do we haven't done any fundraising so far. We haven't done our big crowd fund, or like whether it's a bio or a juice box or whatever it is. We haven't done that yet. So there's going to be a couple of iterations of that for us that will happen in the next. We'll see. Like, but there will be a short-term version and a long-term version when market conditions are better, where people can get involved that way too. And then we're always, we go to all the conferences right now, and we usually speak, and we're there. And the DeSci events at conferences, if people are curious, like at all about DeSci, they're still very small. You can still there's a lot of meet and greet stuff with all the founders of the big companies, all the VCs of DeSci. It's a very easy part of the industry to kind of network and meet people at. And so if people are interested in ever meeting us or meeting anyone in DeSci or BioDAOs, most of the major conferences, Token 2049, Eat Denver, ECC. I don't know if there's going to be a DevCon this year, but whatever there is, it changes every year. But all the big events, there's a big DeSci portion now, which is pretty cool.
Also, Vitalis Bay will be at, and I'll be speaking at Vitalis Bay in Berkeley, California in April.
Awesome. Yeah, if I can, I will try and make it. I don't know if I'll be able to, but it would be great as well for those of us in the U.S. to see a little bit more of this in the U.S. I think now that the current administration's perspective is changing on crypto, and also maybe on healthcare, we'll see.
I think so.
Maybe we'll see more innovation, more of these conferences happening in the U.S. too.
there's so much that needs to change, like that Bobby's going to be working on, that it's like, what's he going to get to first and what happens next? It's just a time question, right? Is it like a year one thing? Is it a year two thing? Is the NIH going to be funding DeSci in year 2 or year 3? Because it's definitely going to happen this term. You know?
And he likes peptides. And Greg, just
Loves
as a final note, like you were involved, right? You were involved with RFK Jr.'s campaign and all that other sort of stuff too, right? In his mission.
I was a big donor to the campaign. I was a big donor to his personal charity, Children's Health Defense. You used to only be able to donate so much to the campaign. It was a really, it was an independent movement. They didn't have a DNC or an RNC, so you could donate like $6,000 to the campaign, which I did at Eat Denver. Eat Denver was kind of like his coming out for a lot of crypto for a lot of us, which is really great. And then you could donate as much as you wanted to Children's Health Defense, which was the main movement, kind of like not helping the campaign, but helping like fight the vaccine industry and fight big pharma and fight like the censorship army, all the stuff that we know now, but like was really nascent then. PhD did a really great job on. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to be in a position to support them.
Awesome. And then hopefully he'll have a positive perspective, right, on peptides, new perspectives on giving people access to medicines that maybe were held away or held back from them would be really powerful, right?
Yeah, he's definitely very experimental. Also, you see him taking methylene blue on the airplanes. There's all these like things that are not part of the general, the normal healthcare science world that like are more experimental. And he's been really cool about that stuff. And I think stem cells, like exosomes, like all the cutting edge stuff that you see at longevity conferences that are not, your normal doctor wouldn't tell you about. Like he's in the know on.
Well, we're just beginning to explore it. So just wanted to thank you both. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Greg. We have thoroughly been DeSci and peptide pilled. And
I'm glad. Good. That was the goal.
Yeah. So really excited to join the community. And we're looking forward to tracking your progress and, of course, sharing everything once you go live with your DAO as well. Thanks all.